All right, so I'm working with my armature that I developed earlier, and so this is that wadded up paper, some tape, and then that one layer of paper mache that I did with the newsprint. Again, it could be newspaper. I let it dry so it got pretty hard, and of course I did the drawings here. So talked a little bit about this before, but you know, it's a good idea to conceive of your sculpture from every angle, like front, side, top, a 3/4 view, maybe the other side, whatever's going to happen. Doesn't make sense in this case for me to do the bottom because I'm probably just going to make the bottom flat. But I have a handy reference here that kind of helps me out, and so I'm using this anatomical skull to kind of like rough in and look off of. So I have a bigger version of that to kind of help me. So I'll be referencing that often as I'm working. So made myself some slip again, and I think I'm gonna get started with some basic forming. And so I just want to create a rough, kind of a rough aspect of this skull here with mine. And so for this, I really like to use kind of thick slabs, like about like this. And then typically I'll start on the bottom, and I'll just sort of add this to the outside like so. And what's nice about this kind of clay, again, I know that I talked about this in the functional project, but you don't really have to worry about like clay rules in terms of thickness and things, because it won't go into the kiln, so I can just start to kind of pile clay onto this. My sensibilities as an artist really mix sort of the three-dimensional conception of what I'm looking at when I'm drawing with a flat representation. So I think in 3 dimensions, and it really helps me to build sculpture. I know that some people who may be talented at drawing and painting may have a hard time jumping into that 3rd dimension, but it's important to practice these types of things. You're going to have students that have natural sensibilities about this, and you want to be able to give them an opportunity to work 3-dimensionally or sculpturally. So once I get this kind of layered all over, you can see I'm just kind of packing on, trying to maintain a consistent thickness, because if I do carve into it, you know, I don't want some areas thin and some areas thick. I'm just kind of laying it on right now. If I were to add stuff later, I'd probably scratch and slip. But I'm going to do a lot of blending to help this thing be nice and strong. It is going to get a little heavier as we go, and it takes way too long to dry out if you don't have an armature or an undercarriage, because all we really need to wait to dry out is the clay on the outside. So I strongly advise using an armature underneath if you're going to be building something of substantial size. And for me, this is going to be roughly like the size of a softball, maybe a little bit smaller, baseball size, whatever. So I'm doing kind of a smaller version. Okay, when I feel like I have it all on there, I'm just going to kind of roughly smooth stuff out. And what I like to do is I like to draw on my clay. It's going to kind of work it using the table, kind of rolling it on my newspaper here to get everything a little bit smoother. So any place where I see that there's like creases and things like that, or like where I join 2 slabs together. Okay. I feel like that looks pretty good. Might take a little bit more of this clay and put on top here. I've got like a little divot in there. I'm just going to smooth it on. Whoops. Okay. So I made myself a little tool here to kind of help me sculpt, and so I sharpened one side so that I can kind of carve and cut. The other side I just smoothed out with some sandpaper so that I can smooth things over. I'm going to start by drawing with my pencil, however, on this, and so I'm going to start kind of like looking at this thing straight on. And so I'm really concerned with the front at this point. And so what I'm going to kind of do here is try to get a line of symmetry going. So like when I draw faces and stuff, I'll usually draw a line that goes straight down, because the face is divided in half like this. I'll get a brow line about 1/3 of the way down. That's going to be like this here. And so I'm just going to kind of start drawing in what I see. I hope you have a good angle on this, but I'm kind of sitting off to the side. And it may be kind of hard to see the drawing in this, but just kind of helps me work out my ideas in advance. So that would kind of be where the eye holes go. I think my nose is going to be kind of a triangular shape in here like this. So it looks like I'm going to have to add a good deal out for the jaw because I don't feel like I have enough on that. So what I'll do is I'll kind of sculpt in a spot here. And that'll be kind of a placeholder for this. So what I'm going to do right now is just kind of start pushing in on some things because I'm observing that this comes in a little bit on the sides and then it comes in right here as well. I need to push the ocular cavities in quite a bit as well. So I just kind of keep it rough at this point. Just want it to have a general likeness as to what I'm doing. Often I will turn it to the side and look at the profile, take a look and see what the difference would be between the two. And it looks like, you know, I'm probably gonna have to add a little bit of clay up in here just to get this kind of like a forehead thing going on. So I'm just gonna kind of rough out a piece like this and lay it across. And at first it looks kind of weird, but once you get it smoothed on, it starts to look better. If your clay is difficult to work with, you can add a little bit of water to it. You can see that the blue's coming off of my popsicle stick here, but that's okay because I'm going to paint this with acrylic like I did my functional piece. Okay, I'm pretty happy with that forehead. I think that'll work for me. Kind of get this pushed in on the side a little bit more. Okay. So when I'm looking at the nose, I see that this comes out quite a bit, and I really don't have that yet. But one way that I can do that is I can push in right here, and I can begin to kind of pinch and sculpt and pull that out a little bit. But if I look at this, like this kind of goes, it dips in, right? And so I'm gonna push that in right here, kind of compress that clay a little bit, so I can try to get that same profile. Again, this is why it's handy to think about sculpture in 3D. Consider it from every angle that you can. Starting to look a little bit better, right? Now I'm going to go ahead and add the jaw element to this so that I can get a little bit more fine with my sculpting. So for that, I'm going to have to probably sculpt something that looks like this jaw scenario. So when I look at the side of this, I've kind of sketched that out in a rough way. I feel like this side's a little bit better to look at. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to start first with the chin, and I'll think about this like this is the middle. So I'm just going to kind of push in a chin shape, kind of make it triangular. It helps me to look underneath and kind of see what that shape should look like, and I'll just try to mimic my modeling here. Flatten that out a little bit. Looks a little bit thick. As I look at the side, kind of looks like I should taper it up to some degree. So, got to make the other side the same. Anything with symmetry, we want to get it as close as possible to symmetrical. I feel like I have a pretty good rough jawline here, and again I can add teeth and things like that later. I just want to get the general shape of it. I'm going to take one more look at the bottom here and see. Looks like this is a little bigger than that side, so I'm just going to pinch a little bit off and then push that up. Whoops, to some degree. Cool. Take a look underneath. Looks like I could probably smooth that out more, maybe even like create a better rounded spot there. Maybe I made it a little too severe. So you can work with this for quite a while. So be picky, it's important. Now when I try to set this on top, I'm seeing that I'm going to have to do something to kind of build this up a little bit to try to get that to work. So I think I might have to probably push this up and in a little bit. And again, if you're thinking like, okay, this is really complex, right? People, bones, skulls, that kind of thing are very hard to sculpt. You know, choose something a little simpler. But we like to kind of think about sculpting in the arts as similar to the way we draw, where we start with kind of a rough gesture and then we refine that. But this is additive, so you can always add more. And what I like to do is move it around and take a look at all of the shadows and how they fall on the sculpture. And that kind of helps me see what I need to do with it. So I'm going to pack some paper in here so that I have something to attach. I feel like I'm pretty good with this, so I'm going to go ahead and actually use my paper that I was using to draw. That's what I have handy, so I'll go for it. I use a good deal of masking tape just to get it all compacted. Some people use wire, you know, as their armature material. I feel like that's going to help to fill out this area inside of here. So I'm going to go ahead and lay that here. Maybe even push that up in a little bit. I'm going to wrap this around and see what it looks like. Looks like that'll work pretty well for me there. Maybe I need to compact it a little bit more. It makes the jaw a little bit large. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is I am going to scratch and slip this because I feel like it's going to make a better bond for me, and it's kind of a delicate area. So I'm going to paint some slip on there. Not much, just enough to like moisten that texture. I want to take a look at where it's going to go on there. What I do is I just make like a little print on the side so that I can see the wet area, like here and here. Then I know where to scratch based upon where I place that. Put a little bit more slip on there. And then I'm going to go ahead and take this piece, try to really get that compacted down. So it just holds my skull up just enough to get the jawline in there, make it look correct. There we go. Okay, still looking pretty rough. Obviously I need to add teeth still, but I feel like that's going to work for at least the extension for the jaw. I'm going to blend up the side here to make sure I have a good bond. I'll do the same on this side. This side looks a little different than the other, so I'm just going to pinch on it a little bit. I can always add more clay to this side to get that same kind of bulk here, because I definitely see some of that happening on my sample skull that I'm working with. Okay. Alright, I'm going to get back from my work just a little bit here so I can kind of evaluate the side angle. See what I feel like it needs. Definitely needs a little bit more up here. It needs this front jaw to come forward. I might have to move the nose down just a little bit. I'm seeing that now. I'll push that in. Just kind of comparing what I see here with what I have here, and then I'm just trying to match it as best I can. Looks like I might need to push this in just a little bit here and here. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and make a coil for this spot. Maybe a little thinner. Something like that will comprise this teeth area. And I think what I'll do is I'll probably just attach it to both, and then I can carve the teeth out of this rather than adding a whole bunch of teeth on there. So I'm just going to start by scratching all over the back of this piece. again, delicate kind of thing, you know. Smaller pieces like this, it's a good idea to scratch and slip so that it maintains its integrity and strength. Plus I kind of want to cover this hole a little bit, that way I can carve through it later. A lot of times I'll let my sculpture dry out after I kind of get to that basic formed point where I'm happy. That way I can carve it and get more detail. More on that later, I guess. I'm gonna go ahead and wrap that around, push it in. And then again, I'm just looking for a rough representation of what I see here. So it kind of looks like I maybe need to push this in a little bit. I'm going to smooth these kind of together so that I can start working on carving the teeth out of that. Now, I don't think that I'm even going to paint this thing because I'm kind of liking the white of it. But I see all this blue coming out on here, so I may, in the end, go ahead and slap a little paint on it after it's dry. Okay, so now I'm looking at kind of this structure here. And I want to make sure that it's close to what I'm seeing in my example here. So like, if I bring that up and I kind of look around, I see that I need to pinch in some areas like here.